Hi, everyone. 2.5 years ago, Remy Berthaud and I had the idea to create a conference dedicated to open source businesses. We're now preparing for the third edition of Open Source Founders Summit and started this video series to showcase the kinds of conversations between leadership and open source companies that happen at the event. If you would like to be part of the conversation, you should join us May 18th and 19th in Paris. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second Open Source Founders Summit podcast. Today, I'm talking with Tarus and Michael, who are going to give us some great insights into building open source companies. Before we start, can each of you introduce yourself just a little bit, real quickly? Tarus, you want to start?
Sure. My name is Tarus Balog. For 20 years, I ran an open source company focused on OpenNMS, which was an open source network monitoring solution. And we sold the company in 2019. I parted ways in 2021. And now I do open source strategy at Amazon Web Services.
Cool, and I'm Michael Meeks. I guess I'm the CEO and founder of Collabora Productivity that does all sorts of office productivity, open sourcey things. I guess I also founded the Document Foundation, created LibreOffice, and did a lot of Linux desktop open source stuff before then as well. So, yeah.
And I'm Emily, and I founded Open Source Founders Summit with Remy Berthaud, who is one of the co-founders of Passbolt. It is in May 18th and 19th this year, which is 2026. If you're watching this podcast after the conference, well, join us next year. So the conference is all about how to build financially successful and sustainable open source companies. The question I want to start us off with is, what is the biggest advantage in your mind of being an open source company? What does that give you that your closed source competitor doesn't have access to?
So, of course, you can go to the Open Source Founders Summit. I mean, I think no, all joking aside, it is really an awesome conference and just a great place to meet up. So from my side, I think getting closer to the customer and the partner. So my experience of trying to negotiate business deals to collaborate with other parties around a common IP or code base is that this takes 18 months or so if you're successful. So there's just this huge time to market gap. And so one of the wonderful things that open source gives you is just this ability to collaborate with all sorts of people who you might compete with later or people who you work, you'll be lifelong partners with. And to do that with almost no friction and almost no barrier to entry. And that's just fantastic. And of course, there's a whole load of choices of license and things around that, but just making that constitution of your open source community and your company very clear and upfront, using these standard licenses and standard ways of working together that people can understand is just fantastic. And then, of course, the real fun is actually working together, closely with those customers and partners and so on and doing good things. But I'd say, to me, that's removing business friction and getting a lot of strategy people out of the room so you can do technology is fantastic.
So just to push on that a little bit, when we talk about collaboration, this sounds like slightly warm and fuzzy to me. How does that warm and fuzzy collaboration translate into cold hard cash?
Now you're asking the guy with the Collabora shirt on. So, so how does collaboration help?
I don't want to get a hug. I just want cash.
Absolutely. So I think it's not so much the hug as being able to improve your product. So for example, we partner with Nextcloud very vigorously, and their product has bugs, and we can jump in and we can try and fix those, and we can work together and we can collaborate, and we can collaborate on fixing the bug that's important for our product and may not be important for theirs, and we can put focused effort on that, get a really quick result, and then just get a better result for our customer in the market, so their satisfaction is increased, they're happier. So that's one, with a partner. Obviously, with customers can see what you're doing. That transparency is really exciting. And so, they get involved in UI design development, just depending on how interested and engaged they are. We have customers of things that come and sit in our calls and encourage us and say, oh, I was looking forward to that feature. And have you considered doing this? And what about moving the button there or doing this other thing? And actually, all of that feedback goes in and is taken account of. And if we don't take account of it, hey, they can hire someone else, a contractor, to come along and do or fix or just do it themselves in today's world. So I think that's yeah, just that really rich interaction. But as I say, the real barrier to entry that is got rid of is that big style business negotiation nightmare of trying to work out how to work together as companies. It's just completely taken out of the room.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned bugs, Michael, because one of my favorite stories, OpenNMS was very much focused on network equipment. And one of our customers used Extreme Networks equipment. And Extreme is, I think they're still around, but they weren't a Cisco or a Juniper. They made good gear. I'm not trying to say anything like that, but they had a bug in their S&P agent. And so whenever we tried to make a query, we'd get a bug, it'd throw a log. And the customer, another Michael, by the way, a friend of mine named Michael, he didn't know anything about Java. And OpenNMS is this monolithic Java application, but he was able to do a search for the error. And it turned out that Extreme Networks was not sending. There are two variables that you have to send on an S&P version 2 request, and they left them off. And so he opened a bug. He did a Wireshark trace. He sent him a bug, sent him a copy of the standard, and Extreme Networks wrote back and goes, "Well, it works with OpenView, you know." And so the customer went in and he basically wrote 3 or 4 lines of Java code that says, if this comes in missing these things, ignore it and throw a log that this is the stupid Extreme Networks bug. And the customer was able to fix the issue. Now, we offered support services and we would have looked into it as well, but it's really, really hard. That the beauty of an open source solution over a proprietary solution is that it moves that agency into the hands of the customer and away from the vendor. And as vendors, we want to do the best for our customers, but part of that is giving them the power to self-serve.
I think it's really interesting, Michael, that you mentioned that you can go and fix a bug in Nextcloud because maybe that bug is really important to you, but it's not that important to Nextcloud. Same thing for your customers. So let's say your hypothetical company has 100 customers and there's a bug that affects one of them. And let's say that one customer is the lowest dollar amount of all of their customers. They represent the lowest amount of ARR. So fixing that bug that affects that one customer probably isn't the top priority for that company. But it might be very important for that customer. And if they can fix it themselves, it ends up being a win-win.
Sure. I mean, we provide all sorts of products to help people by dedicated engineers and time and consultancy. You know, we have all of those things too. But all of those take. I mean, it's very easy to buy them. They, you know, you can send me a PO or whatever, and it'll be done. But even so, there's some friction there, and it's just really getting that barrier to entry to contribution right down that I think is the preeminent thing, and the barrier to collaboration of all sorts of kinds in that regard. I mean, so I mean, negotiating over is it a bug, is it a feature, is it a whatever and whatever can easily take longer than it takes to fix the fix the thing. You know, what service level agreement do we have? You know, which is like none of this. Let's just get on and do something good. And I think open source really opens the door for lots and lots of that to happen, and it empowers the customer and the partner, and just really makes these interactions much more seamless.
And this is kind of a trick with open source business models, is this idea that you're not selling functionality, in the sense that you're not selling a feature and you're not manufacturing this scarcity like you get with a proprietary software. Whereas you're focusing more on the ability to get into the code, to find those people who can help you do it, and it's just so much more rapid than dealing with a monolithic proprietary company that you may be the low-flying hawk. You may be the person who's not spending very much money, but to you, this particular issue is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm. We could use another example. What if the bug is actually a feature? So for one person, for one customer, it's a bug, and for 99, it's a feature. So in that case, no matter what you do, that one person isn't going to get their needs met unless they make a change to their instance.
We had so many flags in our code specifically to address that. Like if we change the behavior of anything, 99% of the time, sometimes we had to make a change, but 99% of the time we would add a bool somewhere that said you can turn it to the old way just by throwing this bool back to false or true or whatever.
So what do you do if this collaborative approach is the biggest advantage that open source companies have? What do you do to make it work as a business advantage? Do you just say, hey, we're open source, so magically that's going to happen, this collaboration is going to happen? Or what do you do to push it, to make more customers think like that example that you just gave, Tarus?
I honestly wouldn't. I don't have collaboration in on my T-shirt, but I honestly don't think that is the biggest value. And one of the things you said, Emily, that kind of frames this is we're here to talk about open source business, not the feels. How do we help customers? What value do we provide to customers? I used to do a talk on running an open source business, and I started off with saying it's pretty much the same as any business. You have to provide a product that someone wants that provides enough value that they pay for it. And it doesn't, the product may be different in an open source company versus a proprietary company, but you still have to focus on the fact that you're here. It's not a charity. You're here actually to provide value so that you can feed your developers so that they can come to work happy, so they can make more software that makes everything happier. And I tried everything. The thing I love about the Open Source Founders Summit, and I strongly encourage anyone who's watching this, who's on the fence, come to the Open Source Founders Summit, because you will see that everybody has a different answer to this. Some people focus on services and not subscriptions. Some people focus on subscriptions and not services. But what I found is people pay for three things: simplicity, security, and stability. If you can take an open source project and you can make it simpler to use, more stable, and more secure, people will give you money for it. Now, the collaboration aspect is a big part of it because you can work together. Like Michael was saying, our feature, our list of features was driven by what our customers told us. And we were able to implement them much quicker than in a proprietary company where you sit around a conference table and guess at what your customers want. But ultimately, customers are looking for, how can you make my life simpler? How can you make my technology decisions more secure and more stable?
I think it's interesting that I like that you talked about the fact that running an open source business isn't fundamentally a different animal than running any other kind of business. You have to get people's money, and then you have to pay the people who work for you. You're not communists. You're not running a charity. And what I think about this conference and a lot of the work that I do is about figuring out what's different. Like if we say 95% of running an open source business is the same as running any other business, well, what's the 5% that's different?
It's different.
And that's what I think is really interesting.
Definitely. Yeah, so I think you're right. The difference is often the interesting bit. And I don't know. So from our perspective, we try and partner with people left and right. So one of the distinctives that we have is very partner-driven sales strategy, and that has many advantages and many disadvantages too, in terms of the length of time it takes to set those channels up and the competitive dynamic in the market and so on, which is tricky. But against that, it means that we can share revenue and share that with people. So in terms of getting to the customer, people, even small shops, we can give that scale and backup to, so they can feel confident to go and sell support. But by themselves, there was no way they could provide. But they have Japanese language skills, they're embedded in the market, they have contacts, and now they have a great brand and backup to help that really succeed. And that, of course, shares revenue and shares wealth, and is not a sort of winner takes all greed strategy. It's a spread the goodness and grow capability everywhere. And it's fantastic to see lots of our partners growing and succeeding, with our help and working together to do that. So we love that.
I think that this is also a different mindset than sometimes you find even in the open source community. So or in the open source business community, just to note there's a very big difference between we will share the very meager resources that come from running this open source project as nearly a charity versus we are going to absolutely kill it, and it's going to the rising tide is going to raise all the boats. It's going to lift up everybody, so everyone gets rich from our business. Or I don't know if that's quite the right way, but we spread the wealth so that lots of people get rich from our business, versus the idea that we just all stay poor. And I think that's a mentality shift that really a lot of the open source business community could use to take. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, there's lots of ways to do that. Of course, you can hire people all over the world. Often you see that open source people hire their communities. Why is there no community anymore? Well, we hired it all and then more, right? And it's one of those great tensions between how can we, grow our community and then not accidentally hire them all. That's an interesting problem to have. But yeah, so you can do it by hiring, or you can do it by partnering and seeding other businesses that grow and work with other people. I think that's just a richer, a more robust way of doing it. But to each their own.
I'm interested, Michael. We tried a partner-driven model, and it was just never very successful. I mean, so we did network monitoring, and some of our users were consultants. And this is pre-cloud. You have to remember this, pre-cloud. So these consultants would be brought in to install a mail server and a website. And by the way, here's your monitoring piece so you can make sure all this is working. And we never really saw a dime from those people because, and I'm not upset about that, but it's just like, they were out promoting OpenNMS and they were using it, but there was no way to equitably capture that and come up with a program that, where they could hire us to do something or bring us in to do something, unless the customer was very large. I mean, if the customer was large, then yeah, they would need the support. But quite frequently, that person was the support person. I once asked a user, why don't you buy support? And they were like, well, that's what the customer hires me for. I'm the support. And so they would get on our mailing list and stuff and ask questions, and that's how they do support. So what partner things do you, I don't want to hijack the thread, but where does the partnerships work really well for you? You mentioned Nextcloud. I was just...
Oh gosh, Nextcloud, OwnCloud, PyDO, cFile, OpenCloud. I mean, we have, I think, 250-ish partners doing different things at different scales. And that's really our preferred route to market. We don't want to compete with those people. We want to do our bit. We want to do it well. So how do we do that? First, we give great margin. So like you could do it yourself, but you could also partner with Collabora and get a lot of that value, and also, build a relationship with the customer, own your own customers, build a business, and actually it's clearly better to do it with us. But beyond that, we also, as we invest in training and equipping partners, we make it very clear that we are going to be building the subscription and doing the security support and whatever, and you're going to be doing level 1, level 2 support, sales, smiling, customer relationships, owning the customer. We partition those roles just pretty clearly in our partner agreements up front. And sometimes people say, well, we want to do it all ourselves. We want to take the open source software and package it ourselves and do that. And that's fine, but they're not going to be a partner of ours. So, it's either or. And either way is good, but I think our model works really well and scales nicely. And we have a very, very complicated product. We're blessed with these giant standard specifications, 35-year-old code and millions of lines of it. So just the fixed cost of having a team that can engage with that and enter that has traditionally been quite high.
So I have one last question before we wrap up. What do each of you think is the most underutilized growth lever in open source businesses? Choose one.
Do you want to go first or me, Mike?
Go for it, Tarus. I'm
Okay.
still thinking. I might agree with you.
Well, I want to point out that I'm here just as me, but I work for Amazon Web Services, and I think the most underutilized lever is the idea of making a hosted service of your open source product. if it allows itself to be provided as a hosted service, that is one way where you can scale and you can drive a lot of revenue where you may not otherwise be able to do it. And in my dream, and this is rarely implemented, in my dream, you have a hosted service and there's like an exit button. And you press the exit button and all of your data and all of your configurations downloaded. You can roll up the same application on-prem, load everything back in, and you don't lose any functionality. And not that many people do it that way, but that would be my dream, because you get rid of the vendor lock-in, yet you provide that simplicity, that security, and that stability. And it's an easy way to scale because it's an incremental cost for the next person.
Yeah, so from my side, I would say investing in marketing. I think a lot of open source companies are heavily engineering led. And I mean, I look at my company and it's like that. We have a tiny fraction of people doing marketing, and although we try and spread that across the team. So I think getting everyone involved in marketing, this engineering idea that if you build it, they'll come, and it's just nonsense. And or that if you're better, then that's what matters, and that's also nonsense. And actually, you've got to tell people about what you're doing. You've got to communicate it in a winsome way. And I look at my company and I think we need more marketing people. And then I go and hire engineers. So I think that's the the lever that needs pulling is the and of course, because we market to partners, not end users, it's kind of a different market. But I think just doing a better job of that is something I regret. I think I should have spent more on those technical marketing stuff.
Excellent. Well, we're going to wrap up there because we're keeping these short and sweet. Thank you so much to both of you, and I will see you in May.
Thanks so much, Emily. Looking forward to it.
Great.